Hey, Derek Sheridan from Rust Belt Basketball Coaches Network. I made a quick slide here about uh, something that's very close to my heart, and that's coaching in this time of the year. There's a reason why this part of the year is referred to as either Yay May or Heartache May. And I'm talking about people going for new jobs, those unfortunate souls who were released from their coaching jobs. And I want to maybe give you some insight on how to handle some of these situations. Is I have most certainly been on both sides of the spectrum, the yay aspect and the heartache aspect. So yay may, you either one of two things. You got a new job or you kept your job. And there's a lot of excitement involved in that, as there should be. And then the other side of the spectrum is heartache may, and that refers to, unfortunately, maybe you were released from your coaching job, or you went after a job you really wanted and unfortunately didn't get it. Maybe you didn't even get an interview. So the yay may aspect of it, I think of the movie Major Leagues, when the Wild Thing, his teammates pull a joke on him, and he's got a red card in his locker, which signifies that you've been cut from the roster in the preseason or in spring baseball. And of course, anyone who's seen that movie knows that his friends pulled a joke on him. But in a couple scenes later, Tom Berenger, who plays the catcher in that movie, is in the locker room, and some of the guys open their lockers up and they do not have the red slips. And they start to celebrate, and Tom Berenger grabs them and says, some of these guys just got their hearts ripped out, and you're going to celebrate in front of them. Not cool. And so that is something that always stuck with me in regards to this time of year. And then heartache may, welcome to the club. And what that means is, for example, I'll use myself. The first time I got fired from a coaching job, it's devastating. The first time most certainly is the worst. But the older coaches in the area who were my mentors, or some of them were my mentors, all called and said, "Hey, welcome to the club." There's two types of coaches in the state of Indiana: those who have been fired and those who will be fired. and and it's a surreal feeling when you get red slipped or you're called in for your postseason evaluation and you're simply told you're not welcome back, but they're going to open the job up, and now it's time for one of two things to happen. You scramble, get your stuff together, get your resume together, get on the phone, start making contacts, and start hunting down any open job that you can get that falls within your teaching area. And that's something civilians don't understand. When you're looking for a coaching job, especially these days when not many school districts create teaching positions for coaches, it makes it much more difficult when you've got to match that potential coaching job or jobs with a specific teaching area. Coaching is a rotten business. Greg Campy said this at a clinic I was at a long time ago, and he is right. Coaching is a rotten business. One of my closest friends, for over 30 years, is a college coach, and I don't know anyone who wouldn't say he's one of the best coaches in America. Just 2 seasons ago, in his division, he was the national coach of the year. He put his small college on the map. Prior to him taking that basketball job, in my lifetime, I can not remember them having any remarkable seasons. And he was called in with no prior warning and given a red slip. You're done. And just completely cut his knees out from under him, cut his feet out from under him, I guess I should say. Completely blindsided him and pretty much just threw him out to the curb. after everything he had done for this university. And he had done quite a bit, far more than just coaching basketball. He's very involved in the community. And it goes without saying that he is still in a state of shock, but it's a rotten business. Things that may look obvious or may look overly obvious just are not in this line of work. It's a rotten business. Some of the best coaches are going to get fired, and some coaches who maybe have the reputation of not being so good for whatever reason keep their jobs. So this is another line that was given to me many years ago: is forget fair. If you're worried about fair, you're in the wrong country. Forget fair. So it's a rotten business, and those who would say it's not a rotten business, I would question how long they've been in it or how hard they work at it, because those guys and gals who really put their nose to the grindstone and work this coaching job is a lifestyle, and it's part of their DNA and part of their identity, understand that the heartache or the rottenness associated with coaching is a big thing, and it wears on all of us. I had a great conversation with a young coach here in the Rust Belt office 2 weeks ago, and he was retained, but a little nervous about the upcoming, years ahead of him, or year, how long, ever long they're going to give him. The administration in his postseason interview were not overly optimistic. They were not overly excited for him. And my comment to him was, forget that, forget them. You're back. You've got two choices. Make the most of this. If this is where you want to be, you've got to forget about all that external pressure, or it's going to eat you alive. I've been there, and it will. It'll eat you to your core, and you'll spend more time thinking about those things than you will doing your job, both in the classroom and on the court. The second option: go get a new job. Do whatever you can to get a new job. And I know coaches today aren't vagabonds like my generation, where we moved a lot. Some are, but it's not like it used to be. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. But again, it's a rotten gig. Coach Campy was right. And if you got retained, make the most of it. Study, study, study. Find ways to make yourself a better coach. Find ways to make yourself much more valuable than you currently are. And that's a word that I learned from one of the better coaches I've ever met in my life. And he talks about value a lot. What is your value to your employer? What is your value to your district? And what is your value to your students? What is your value to your student athletes? And what do you do on a daily basis to grow your value? And I was in my early 30s when I heard him say that to me. And my goodness, did it resonate with me. So hopefully that's something for you to think of. Now, that's not to say those guys or gals who have been let go did not bring that value. That's not my point. I'm just giving you something to think about. Handling adversity. And I'm talking now more about those people who, the worst thing's getting fired. Those poor souls who got fired, lost their coaching job. You've got to break this down, in my opinion, into two categories: task relevant and task irrelevant. Task relevant: get you the job done in your classroom. Number one, that is your number one priority. Do not give the administration one thing to regret by keeping you as a teacher. Get the job done in the classroom. Don't give them any complaints there. Focus on what you can control, and focus on getting a new job if that's what you want to do. Get on the phone, get with your contacts, make new contacts, be proactive. Do not let your feelings get in the way with focusing on task relevant duties. I'm not going to use the language my older mentors used with me many, many years ago, but screw your feelings. And that was something that was hard for me to take, but it meant something down the road. Like 10 minutes after I heard it: screw your feelings. Your feelings aren't going to get you a new job. At that time in my life, I wanted to coach so bad. I could not imagine living without coaching basketball. So I could sit around and twiddle my thumbs and whine and moan and not return phone calls or return texts or any of that stuff people do when they're in their, cocoon, so to speak. Don't do those things. Be an effective communicator. Focus on what you've got to do to move up the ladder. Everything task relevant. Anything else is task irrelevant. Your feelings. Yeah, it hurts. It hurts bad. It's the kind of pain that until you've endured it, you don't have any idea what it's like. And it's an awful thing. But you've got to forget those things and move forward. Forget about the task irrelevant thoughts. Forget about the task irrelevant duties. Now it's time to get to work. Bust your can, get back in the game, get a resume, a cover letter, get your coaching portfolio dusted off, and have a professional look at your stuff. A lot of people forget, we're in an education based world here in high school athletics. Make sure your resume is grammatically correct. Make sure your resume doesn't have spelling errors. Your cover letter, make sure your coaching portfolio is legit, not just a bunch of things you've copied and pasted. Now, with the advent of the internet, anybody can copy and paste anything they want. So those coaching portfolios now are not anywhere near as valuable as they were prior to the internet, where we had to make these things on our own using word processors, typewriters, whatever, but to make them look good, make them look professional. It took a lot of time to make those things, and it took a lot of time to make them look professional. So my point is, make sure all your stuff is legit. If you're turning a coaching profession or a coaching portfolio in and the URL's up on the top of the page, it's going in the trash can. Especially if you got an interview or you're trying to get an interview at a school that actually values athletics, which those numbers are dwindling by the year, but they're still out there. For example, I just read a great article, and it's in this week's volume 61 of Ted's Honor. A school district here in Ohio, excuse me, outlined their interviewing process for hiring their head boys basketball coach, and it was refreshing. The article broke it down, and it's the way an interview should be. So my point is, this school district let it be known to their community that they highly, highly value their athletic program and they highly value their basketball program. If you'd like that article, again, it's in volume 61. I believe it's article of the week or one of the articles of the week that's worth a read. But I can't stress this enough. And as coaches, we always talk to kids or in our classrooms about handling adversity. Well, this is a grand time for you to show what that means because every kid you see knows that you just got canned. Now, they might not know that you didn't get a job. They probably don't. I'm not really talking about that aspect of it. I'm more so talking about the poor people, the poor coaches who got shipped back to Boston. So task relevant versus task irrelevant. I can't stress that enough. And you can use this if you were really excited about a job and you think, you did everything necessary to get that job and you interviewed well, and maybe you didn't get a second interview or didn't get the job. It's back to work. Task relevant versus task irrelevant. If you'll think about that, I can almost promise you, without knowing some of you, obviously, that will help you. It takes a lot of focus and it takes an awful lot of stick to itiveness. And this is something where we talk about mental toughness. This is it, my man. This is it. This ain't a hobby. Head coaching isn't for everyone. And these are some things that are hard for people to hear, but I think it's important. Head coaching is not for everyone. If you have a personality where you need to be liked, and it's really important to you that you need to be liked, head coaching probably isn't for you because you're going to have a lot of people not liking you, and those numbers grow every year. One of my favorite coaches of all time, Marty Johnson, who now is in charge of the Indiana Basketball Coaches Association, said one year, You gain more enemies at the end of every season than friends. And the longer you're at one school, those enemies compile and compile and compile. And before too much longer, you're really outnumbered. And that's just the way it is. We're all replaceable. And that's something that a lot of my better principals over the years have told me. You know, I think understanding that can be a great motivator. And that goes back to the value aspect we were talking about earlier. The highs and lows in coaching are brutal. The highs are euphoric. They're almost like an opiate. And then the lows are just devastatingly brutal. So having a good balance, working towards a good balance in your coaching life is of the utmost importance. And I can't stress this enough. The job you do in your classroom is of the utmost importance. You know, that's 99.9% of your paycheck. Maybe that's a little bit exaggerated, but I'm pretty close. Coaches have to be tougher than most. You know, being a head coach is a tough gig. Being an assistant coach is a tough gig, but it ain't nowhere near as tough as being the head coach. You know, the shot caller. So it's a tough, you've got to be a tough son of a gun. Those who haven't had their feet in the fire will not understand. A lot of the times, these are the people who want to give you advice or talk to you and try to make you feel better and those things. But if they hadn't had their feet in the fire, they have no idea what they're talking about. Now, some of them are friends, and yeah, they can help you a little bit, but put them to work for you. You know, if you've built your own army, help them help you. Be specific, delegate some things to them so you're not doing all these things on your own to get that job. Help them help you to make contacts wherever you're applying. But keep that in mind whenever you're talking to somebody, especially if you're talking to somebody who's got all the answers. You know, Mr. Google, this person who's got all the answers. They've never had their feet in the fire. Sure, they've coached a little league team or they've coached something, whatever, but they were coaching a job where more often than not, they got the job because nobody else wanted it. They haven't had their feet in the fire. You know, they haven't gone out to their car after a loss and had the mirrors knocked off their car. I have. You know, I mean, I'm not trying to make this all about me. I'm just trying to make a point. One of my closest friends, after a loss, had his car turned on its side. So keep that in mind when you're listening to people. If they haven't had their feet in the fire, so be it. You know, but just be careful who you listen to. All these things are nothing more than food for thought for you. But I've wanted to make this video for quite some time, and now I've got the some of a platform to do it. I just pulled the trigger and did it. You know, talking about all these things, looking back over the years, just here recently at the high school level, a coach who I know really well, and I think is one of the better coaches in the area I'm in, got called in, and he was relieved without any prior warning. Um, and I'm pretty darn sure it's because the athletic director's trying to make a name for himself or he's trying to scare the other staff, coaching staff into submission. I'm not sure. He's never coached in a head coaching role. He doesn't have a teaching license, so he has no idea what we go through every day in the classroom and then on to the field or the court, if you will. So you've got to be careful of these things, you know. If you're working for somebody who you know doesn't have your back, you've got to be really careful and you've got to find a way to get to that person and motivate them to appreciate what you do. And if they're giving you a lot of criticism and 90% of it is worthless because they have no idea what they're talking about, that's different than some Joe Blow off the street who hasn't had their feet in the fire. If it's your boss, find a way. You know, there's nothing harder in athletics than trying to coach a team without administrative support. Be a good communicator, talk to them, be brutally honest with them. But at the same time, you got to remember these are people that are probably not as tough as the coaching staff or the coaches. So when I say be brutally honest, talk to them in bullet points and break things to them in such a way that you're not throwing darts, so to speak. But it is a rotten business. It's a rotten business. And the whole point of me making this, if I broke it down into just one term, task relevant versus task irrelevant. Think about that. For any of you who are looking for a new job, if we can help you, if I can help you, let me know. I'd be more than happy to help you. But I hope maybe this reaches somebody who might have needed to hear this, and I hope I've helped somebody out there. God bless, folks.